everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you may be tuning in to the Growing Our Future podcast. It is always a pleasure to join you and to have you join us and for us to share with subject matter experts on topics that grow us both personally and professionally. And today is no exception. I will tell you that today, while I'm going to try to host a podcast, I hope what you really take away today is more of a conversation that I like to refer to as coffee with Cleo. So today is about that conversation. It's about that chance just to sit and visit, but visit about some important topics that as young leaders and professionals and educators that we should take note of. Today we have two-time author and CEO of Franklin Strategic Solutions, Cleo Franklin. Cleo, thank you for joining us today.
Aaron, I want to tell you how pleased and excited I am to join this podcast of Growing Our Future. And as you know, you and I have had many conversations over a cup of coffee, and we'll continue to do that because we do take seriously all the things that's going to require to grow our future and to prepare the next generation of our students and future leaders, ensure that they're not only work ready, but ready to take on the global opportunities and challenges that we face in agriculture and beyond.
Well, we're going to jump in here in a minute. Folks, I got to tell you, we'll let Cleo tell you a little bit about his background, but I always tell people, if you want to be the best, train with the best. If you want to really be good at something, go out there and find people that are really good at it and talk to them and listen to them and find those nuggets that you can assimilate and put in place in your life. And Cleo is one of those guys that I just like to sit and talk with because we might talk 15 minutes and out of that 15 minutes, I might have 15 minutes worth of material, or I might just have 1 minute that is golden that I can use for the rest of my life. And so I got to tell you, that hopefully is a conversation we're going to have today. Cleo, I like to start every podcast the same way. And if you don't mind, I'd like to start this one the same way. And I believe that it's important in everything that we do that we start with an attitude of gratitude. Cleo, what are you grateful for today?
Well, Aaron, I'll tell you what I'm grateful for. You know, there's a quote in my book, Coffee with Cleo, and it's just something that I live by. And that quote is, to receive consideration, one must first give consideration. And so what I'm grateful for today is all of the consideration that my mentors, all of the people that I've worked with across the world, and the people that I'm associated with today, the consideration that they have given me to put me in a place that I'm able to enjoy a very, very good life. So I thank them for that. And in return, I'm very, very thankful to be able to share that back in return to those that are in need.
Well, thank you, Cleo. We really appreciate your attitude of gratitude because we're going to give you that opportunity today to give some consideration and pour some consideration and share some consideration, because if we want to know what the future is, we got to grow it. And that's what this series is about. It's about planting seeds of greatness that people can use personally and professionally. And Cleo, when we talk about professional careers and just an incredible testimony, professional testimony, you've got one. Give us a little thumbnail sketch of Cleo Franklin and how you rose from all-star basketball player to the ranks of noted international agriculturalist and tractor guy. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Well, Aaron, you humbled me with that. I guess I'm gonna have to live up to that as best as I possibly can. Well, I'm from originally from Chicago, Illinois. But that being said, I am the product of parents that grew up in rural America, in the Boot Hill, Missouri, as well as in Casco, Arkansas. That's near just northeast of Stuttgart. But both grew up on farms. My mother is probably 5-6 generations, and before they moved to Missouri, they were in the Delta near Course Walls, Mississippi. And my father, of course, his family out of Mississippi and Alabama and then Crockett's Bluff. That really has benefited me is their guidance that really has helped me in all the things that I've done. I parlayed all of the information that they've been able to share with me because they set the example by leading. And they've always told us if it's to be, then it's up to me. And so I've been able to worked for 3 major global brands over 30 plus years, early retired in 2019 and doing more work than ever. That's John Deere, Case New Holland, and Mahindra. And in those particular roles, the things that mattered to me was how can I make a difference? Immediate, midterm, and longer term after I've left. The other thing that's important that I've been able to, just to give you a thumbnail preview of what I've done, of course, my leadership books deal with not just personal but professional development, because you can't really separate what you do personally and what you do professionally. And they're really under that guise to make you not just a better leader, but a better person overall. Last but not least, my businesses, of course, I consult, as well as the boards that I serve on. All these things are really underneath the guise of how can I make and bring a positive impact to initiatives and businesses that matter, to making sure that we prepare the next generation of future leaders with skill sets and capabilities that they can take on and bring to those businesses to make a difference. And that's a positive difference. So that's what I'm all about. That's what fuels me, my passion, and I try to make sure that I live and walk the talk with those particular directions that guide me every day.
Well, you do, Cleo. And I think that, they say that your vibe attracts your tribe. And I would say, Cleo, that vibe is what brings people in close proximity to you, because we want to be around you. We want to hear what you have to say. And so I would say thank you for your willingness to share. There's a lot of people that have experiences very similar, but they don't have that same compelling spirit to share, and you do. And because you do, you've poured into a lot of people, myself included, and others. And to me, that's exciting because, in the words of our good friend Tom Ziegler, he always talks about his daddy, and he said, we're all going to leave a legacy. We're either going to leave a legacy by design or default. And it sounds like you are very purposeful in your attempts to empower those around you for personal and career success. So I just want to say thank you for, again, what you do and your willingness to share.
I appreciate that, Aaron. I think it's important that we do just not occupy a space, but what we do in that space with our treasures and our talent, that we take the time to apply those treasures and our talent to truly move the needle, to truly affect change that is going to be transformational, that we bring a mindset that looks at any problem as an opportunity and as a challenge. And when you do that, that gives you a chance to provide a solution. The name of my consulting business is Franklin Strategic Solutions. And people are looking for solutions today. And we'll get into the world of agriculture that is looking for solutions that you can provide transformation. By 2050, food production is really, by the experts, are asking it to increase by 60-80%, and I'm sure in most cases even more. You got the world population today at about 7 billion, and we're looking at 9.8 or 10 billion, what experts are telling us that's going to happen. So we're going to have to find a solution to innovate at a more rapid pace, to work in an environment in agriculture at every level with less land, scarcity of water, rising input costs of production or to produce, whether you're an ag producer or your company, and also labor issues. So these are challenges that are in need of solution, and we need to make sure that we as leaders today position the next generation to have those skill sets to be able to tackle those problems.
Well, you did a wonderful job of teeing up what we're going to talk about, because everything that you just said is what we're going to dive into. There are times that Cleo and I talk, and we talk about business people and how, how do we engage in a conversation where they want to listen and they want to assimilate? And I always say, tell them that you're going to improve their margins. How do we improve our margins? Well, I think today's conversation, Cleo, is both in how not only are we going to improve margins, but what we're going to do, to your point, we're going to provide some information that if students are listening, this is a chance to gain a competitive edge. This is a chance to begin looking at not where we're at today, but where we're headed and where you can position yourself for career and opportunity success. And I think that's what's exciting about conversations like this, is that we know Not everybody's going to read, your books. Not everybody's going to listen to a podcast. But what we do know is that those that do, that tells you something about who they are and what they're trying to gain in life. They're trying to gain that edge. So today, this conversation is going to plant some seeds of greatness. And again, thank you for wanting to share. So let's talk about this. One of the things I think that we sometimes forget is we use the word agriculture. And I think to the majority of us that are in that world, we know what agriculture is. Sadly, when we look at polls, when they poll people, most Americans don't really understand what that word agriculture means. So I'm going to kind of simplify it for our conversations. And I'm going to say this. Bottom line, folks, we're going to need more food. We're going to need more food. Now, I don't know about you. I've been hungry. I know what it's like to be hungry. And when I look at what Cleo just shared, and we're looking at the world population, and we're looking at the fact that there are going to be hungry people, we've got a responsibility. We got a responsibility not only to our own families and community, but we've got a responsibility to our fellow man around the world. And that is to not let somebody starve to death. I couldn't imagine the horror of thinking that the last thought that I had was I wished I had something to eat.
Yes.
And when we think about where we're headed, Cleo, and the global food needs, we have got to have some incredible minds. We've got to have incredible innovation. We've got to start thinking about efficiency of space. We have to think about the fact that we're going to have and see extraordinary urban sprawl. Those of us in Texas, we're already seeing urban sprawl. We're seeing it consume natural resources. We're going to have to be efficient with our water resources. Cleo, when you think about your career, your travels, your international perspective on agriculture and food, where do you see us going, and what advice and what tips might you give a young person to be in a position to capitalize on this challenge that lay ahead of us?
I love the way that you've set the stage, and let me tell you where I see us going. Today, I'm fortunate to consult with companies that are in Asia, companies that are in Brazil, South America, Mexico, all over the U.S. And when I worked, of course, at those three companies, Mahindra, John Deere, as well as Case New Holland, I did travel the world. And not only did I travel the world, I talked to people that worked the land. And I've also visited those communities. And I'll tell you where I think we're going, and I'll tell you what I feel is going to be needed. Where we're going, no matter where you are in the value chain, whether you produce equipment, whether you're into the seed and fertilizer business, whatever, you're in the food business, companies are looking to increase the innovation pace and rate so that we can provide efficiency, more productivity, and creativity to create a system based on the resources that will not grow. And I talk about land, when I talk about scarcity of water, which are going to require people to reimagine agriculture. For example, at Mahindra, we created the Urban Agriculture Scholarship, which basically gave people within the cities, in the urban areas, an opportunity to seek a career in agriculture via a scholarship at a college of their choice. In addition to that, we also expanded that urban agriculture program that worked with urban farms that looked at unutilized space where we provided, of course, donations in kind, agricultural equipment to help farm those spaces that were non-productive and or assets that were not producing to really become places that you could source local garden food, local supplies of specialty crops right there near in your neighborhood. Now that brought a purpose, a different perspective, but it also brought pride and also connected people in their own way, in their own community, about what they can do to supply locally. Last but not least, we look at vertical farming. I think vertical farming is going to be more important than ever. And by the way, the pandemic has increased those who garden that are also providing their own vegetables and, of course, specialty crop. It's happening here in my subdivision. But that's on a very small scale. The companies that are looking to innovate and to create are looking for individuals who can work in diverse groups, individuals that can look at disparate parts that are unseen and put them all together to create a system that will work. They're looking for individuals that are intellectually curious, that are always asking the question, not what it can be, but how can we possibly expand this and make it more? Last but not least, to take all that into a creative mode and a creative mindset that really not just discount what has been done before, but amplify what has been done before in a way that we could never reimagine. Those are some of the things that we need to prepare our next students who are going to, of course, lead us into this next generation with internships, externships, and experiences, and provide an access gateway that allows them to develop those skills, to acquire experiences, to do those things that are going to stimulate their curiosity, work with diverse teams, enhance their communication skills, as well take time to be creative, and we can do that. And companies that are seeking that skill set and those capabilities, and they exist today, we just need to make sure that businesses, academic institutions are working together to provide that for our young students today.
Well, I think there are some that exist today, and I would even project that, and I think you would agree that there are companies and jobs that we haven't even created yet that are on the horizon, that will become a reality. When we go back to this thought of urban sprawl,
Yes.
I was looking at some statistics, and it really surprised me. I really did. I really thought as a result of the pandemic and this movement that we could begin to work more remotely, that we might see some migration to some more rural and suburban areas. But statistically, they're still saying that by 2050, 2/3 of the world's population is going to be living in urban areas. So if in fact that is true, that we're still going to be in urban areas, I think this dialogue, Cleo, I think this conversation really now has some real opportunity for students and teachers. Within the Texas FFA Foundation, we have a program called the Legislative Lead Program. Matter of fact, Cleo, I think you've had the pleasure of speaking. You honored us by speaking to that group one time. But the Legislative Lead Program, we're trying to help students and teachers become trusted advisors to the elected officials in their community. Here's the reason that's important. If in fact this urban sprawl is going to take place, and if in fact you are right, which I believe you are, that we're going to see more urban agriculture, vertical agriculture, agriculture that's built into houses within neighborhoods where neighbors are sharing commodities with one another. All of this, Cleo, all of this provides an incredible opportunity for students and teachers to begin understanding, how do I dialogue with urban planners? How do I become part of this communication chain? How do I ensure that the students in my classroom are prepared to come out here and go back home and be helpful in solving our food problems, both here locally and abroad? These are the things that excite me about what we're doing, Cleo, because what we're doing today, if in fact you said it so beautifully, this intellectual curiosity, this what if, what's going to happen when kids start taking on this and say, I'm going to learn more about how my city council works. I'm going to learn more about how my county works. I'm going to get more involved with my local farm bureau. I'm going to get involved with the trade association. I'm going to learn more about this aquaculture thing, terraponics. I'm going to learn more about vertical farming. I'm going to learn all of this so that when that time comes where I can be part of an incredible dialogue to ensure the food security of my neighborhood, in my country, and in my world, Cleo, I think it's going to make agricultural science education in the FFA more relevant than we ever imagined.
When you talk about relevancy and compelling, it happens and really when lightning strikes to make something relevant and compelling is when it hits you right square at home. And no matter where you live, whether you're in rural America, urban America, we all need to eat.
Right.
We all rely on food.
Right.
And that food is going to have to be produced. And you talked about food security, traceability, also different aspects of whether it's meat based or plant based. These concepts and innovations that the companies that I'm working with and the companies that I know that are working towards are all trying to find out how best they can bring these ideas to fruition. And the only way that's going to happen is with people with a mindset and a perspective that will work with these organizations that are going to be thinking differently. And you're right. Our teachers, partnering with, of course, the schools, with businesses to provide those internships, externships. We do that through my foundation, the Franklin Leadership Foundation. We provide experiences, internships, and externships so that we can help prepare. And I think this is the thing, and I'll sum it up this way. Sometimes I feel, and I'm a big fan of mentoring, but sometimes I think we over mentor. We over preach, but we under support. And so it's time for us to change the dynamics, to go from mentoring, to go from teaching, to providing experiential learning and opportunities that are going to support this future we're trying to obtain. And if those skill sets that I just outlined, being curious, being creative, working with diverse teams, being able to learn technological skills which are going to be required, and also work in places where there may not be a playbook. There may not be a game plan or a blueprint, and you have these disparate parts, but you have to think creatively to see how you can put them together. Then let's provide students with the opportunity to build those capabilities, to hone those skills, and to help us help ourselves as we face the challenges that are daunting for 2050 and beyond.
So Cleo, are you saying that there's some opportunities out there?
I am Aaron. I am a optimist without question, with a heavy dose of reality. And my optimism tells me, yes, there's great opportunities for students who are looking for career in helping us feed the world along the value chain. But I also know the reality. The reality is that we're going to need it, and we're going to have to engage students in ways that we haven't done before. And this has to be a collaboration, a partnership that is aligned with the vision and goals, but also the opportunities to help us get there. So we have to walk the talk. We have to lay the platform. We have to really set things in a situation where if there's gaps, we got to fill them. We have to fill them quickly.
I was on the phone the other day, Cleo, with one of our fellow foundation board members, Dr. Justin Ransom, who is executive, runs a leadership team for sustainability at Tyson. And we were having this very same conversation about the creative thinking that we're going to have to think. Like you said, we're going to have to be thinking in ways where there is no playbook. One of our previous guests that was on one of our podcasts was Dr. Mindy Brashear, and Dr. Brashear was in the administration when COVID hit and the pandemic hit. There was no playbook for keeping plants open to keep a supply chain moving. There was no playbook when the CO2 that you use to harvest animals was deficient. There was no playbook for any of it. There was no playbook with how do you keep people safe while you're trying to work through a pandemic. To your point, Cleo, the thing that I appreciated that Dr. Brashear said was, thank goodness that FFA taught me how to be a critical thinker, how to be creative, and how to use my professional networks. And so, Cleo, I think that when we look at what Ag Science Education FFA does, it's not only the fact that we can capitalize on these opportunities that you're sharing, but if students will just look around and build their resources right now, they will become their professional colleagues in the future. They will become their consumers in the future, their constituents in the future. And I think that's kind of another lesson here that you're sharing with us.
Yeah, it's important that you take ownership of your future. Don't get me wrong, a little luck goes a long way. We wish for that, but I'm not into trying to wish for the future. I'd rather prepare for the future. And half the battle is knowing. And if we know, that the population is going to go from 7 to 10 billion. If we know food production must be increased by
Exactly.
60 to 80%, which in some cases are not early enough by the projections by the experts. And we know that there's not going to be any more land. If we know these things, that there's going to be increased costs, then I do see that as an opportunity. I don't see it as a place and a destination for disaster. And very quickly, you've asked me about my career. The thing that I'm sharing is what I've been blessed to do. In every place at John Deere, New Holland, as well as Mahindra, don't get me wrong, I've had some failures, but I've learned from those failures. But with those learnings, I've always had opportunities to work in a place where there was no playbook. Mr. Franklin, let's look at Mahindra. When I first came there as chief marketing officer and vice president, we were with the finance company about 180 million. When I left and retired with the finance company, we're about $2 billion. Went from number 6 in market share to number 3 to 120 horsepower and under. But how did that happen? By working with teams who were very creative, who are undaunted by the task, that ambitiously looked at opportunities, that had a mindset that we can, not versus what we can't. And we did a multitude of things to help project and make that projection very, very real. And it can happen, because it has happened.
We could take off and talk about so many topics, Cleo. Let's talk just a little bit about leadership.
Yes.
I always like to sprinkle a little leadership into the dialogue. If you were going to give some leadership tips to young people, I don't know, 2 or 3, what would you tell young people today that they should focus on, that would be seeds that they plant, that if they nurture them will become seeds of greatness?
I would tell young people today, and I teach at the University of Houston as well in the MBA school, and what I teach my MBA students, and those I mentor, these 3 to 4 things. 1, lead like you would expect to be led. What that does, it takes you to look within and look outside, and knowing the fact that those you most admire in leadership, if you want to emulate those qualities and those values, then you need to also embody those things. So there's great examples that we know of great leaders. Everyone has one. One of my favorite leaders was one of the most humble men in the world, and he taught me humility. The second thing I would say is this: always surround yourself with people that will help enhance the things that you are looking to acquire and aspire to. For example, if you are someone that's very analytical and lacking the ability to be creative, then surround yourself with people who are very creative. Your analytical ability and their creativity is really going to be a multiplier. But that is really understanding what you're good at, your strengths, and also being very, 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 I want to say, honest about things that you don't possess. So surround yourself with people that can help accentuate the things that you're doing with skills that you may lack. The third thing I would say is this: don't be afraid to fail. I think failure really is not the end. It's just the beginning of the next success. And that's a mindset. We've talked about these future-ready skills. I think, and I know companies are looking for individuals who are not afraid to work at the ground level, to take those insights and go out and test and try to produce performance. But they also want people who are not afraid to contribute on day one. And if you miss the mark, take those learnings and apply it forward. So those are the things that I would share, those 3 things, with anyone who is looking to lead, to become a better leader. And those are things that I apply to my own experiences as well.
We'll come back here. I want you to share a story here in a second, because it's one of my favorite in your books. You know which one I'm probably going to ask about. But, when you talk about failure, Cleo, one of the things I remember, one time I was talking to this gentleman, and he was just really, I don't know, I guess it was very nice that he was willing just to share with me some real disappointments in life. Mm-hmm. And he was just going on and on about these challenges and storms of life. And I looked at him and I said, I want you to know that I empathize with you because I've been through some as well. And I said, I got something for you. He said, what's that? I said, I can take you to a place where it never rains. I said, I can take you to a place where there are no storms. And he smiled and he goes, really? And I said, yeah. I said, it's called a desert and nothing grows. I said, but when we've had a little rain, when we've had some challenges, when we've had some failures, if we're smart about it, which is what you just said, and we let that sink in and nurture that ground, water that ground, something great's going to grow out of that.
You're absolutely right, Aaron. It's important that, I like to take this, I always call it a mindset that you must have. And you've talked about my book, Coffee with Cleo, uh, several stories of vulnerability. And one of the lessons, of course, is, I'm not a very patient man. And that's why I have to practice patience. But I know that and understand that. There's another lesson that I've talked about by trying to learn how to practice patience. I was taught that through failure. That was really masked in success.
Mm.
But understanding the fact that I might have been successful, but I missed the mark by not bringing someone along, because as you go to the top, you always need to bring the elevator back down to bring people back up with you. In this particular case where I did not practice patience, I could not send the elevator back down. And so
Wow.
my individual success really was hollow because I was not able to bring that person with me that I needed to mentor and learn to mentor better because of the fact of my impatience. So it was a tough lesson, but one that I've applied forward to this very day. And by the way, I still struggle with impatience. That's why I practice patience every day. And I have a good wife that reminds me to do so.
Well, I'd also say this, Cleo, and you and I have had a lot of conversations over the years. I think God didn't create us to be the Lone Ranger. And I think that sometimes just having people that we can talk to sometimes allows us that opportunity to reset some of that patience, if you will.
No, you're absolutely right. And I'll just one more little tidbit that I think that any of the young leaders that are listening to this today, and some of the leaders that are long in the tooth, and this is what I will say. If you can go out and find 3 to 5 people and surround yourself with these individuals, I call them your personal board of directors. Yeah. These are people that are mindful to tell you the truth, that are always there to basically, when you're veering off the path, to put you back on the path in the right way, and that will give you, as some of the folks would coin this as real talk, then build your personal board of directors today. It doesn't cost you a thing, but it will save you a whole heck of a lot of, I would say, heartache and struggles as you prepare. So that's one of the things I want to share with you as well, your personal board of directors.
Awesome. 1 second. Cleo, your books, both of them are just chock full of just great stories. I really like something that you said a second ago, because it was one of my first takeaways in your first book. And you opened right up in that book talking about vulnerability. And I think that's a really strong trait of a leader. But one of the stories in your book that just really struck me, and I thought about our young audience that's listening, that I thought they need to hear this story, involved you and a referee at a basketball game. And just kind of some humility that came from a dialogue that took place after a basketball game. Cleo, would you share that story with us?
It's a pleasure. At the time, it's I'm going to chuckle about it now, but I didn't chuckle when it happened. Aaron, I've been blessed to be a scholarship basketball athlete, and was one of the top Division II ball players in the country. And I'm also inducted into the Hall of Fame, where I played at my alma mater. But that being said, I was playing in a pro league in Indianapolis, Indiana. And we were playing against this team that had several of the professionals of the Indiana Pacers. And let's just say this game, I was smoking. I had a great game. In fact, I scored over 65 points that game. But uncharacteristic of me during that game, I was so enamored and so focused on my scoring and being a top dog. There was a referee that I did not particularly like the way that he was officiating the game. And so it was a very close game, and I would give the referee the business every time I go by him. I would say, you know, you missed that call. In fact, you missed another call, you're terrible. And he never said a word. We lost in overtime, and of course, I was feeling pretty spry and very prideful about my 65 points, and I followed him, again, uncharacteristically of me, off the court into the locker room, and I'm just riding him and telling him how terrible, the worst game, the worst officiating I've ever seen. And he didn't say a word, Aaron. He just kept walking. And then we got to the locker room. I said, you know what? You are the worst referee ever. I don't even know how you can even have a referee shirt on. And he just stopped, paused, and he finally said something to me. And he looked at me and he said, listen, I refereed the game. I saw you play. And I want you to know one thing. My refereeing was not that bad, and you're not that good. And he turned away and showed me his back. Immediately, I shrunk. Everything was diffused. He neutralized me. And in that moment, I realized that, you know what? You're probably right. Here I am thinking that the road to perfection was achieved by my play, but in fact, I was very flawed. And even more so flawed by trying to tell you that I was better than you. Taught me a great lesson, Aaron.
Wow. Well, I mean, Cleo, here's another example. The fact that you're even willing to share that story. I meant to be vulnerable in that moment to say, my shortcoming can be a stepping stone to your success that you were willing to pen and actually put in a book. So I want you to know that I found it very enjoyable because I thought, how many people in my life have said things to me very similar that I needed, that God knew that I needed to hear that to make sure that I stayed on the right path.
Well, that's why it's important to know self. You have to learn as much as you possibly can, but sometimes we need others to help self. And that's when you could surround yourself with those mentors and that personal board of directors. And just in case you miss out and may not have the proper perspective, they'll keep you in line.
That's gold right there, by the way, Cleo. Thank you. All right, folks, we're probably going to go ahead and start our descent here and wrap this thing up. Cleo, I like to wrap up all of these podcasts with kind of a fun question. And I'm just curious, what's the best concert you've ever been to?
My goodness, Aaron, I'm a big music fan, and that's a great question. I will say there's been several, but one of the best concerts I've ever been to was Prince in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I want to say this was in the year of maybe 2003, where Prince really took an opportunity to not just play his wonderful hits, but he improvised. And you talk about one talented man, one talented artist. He really had the audience in the palm of his hand. And we felt very blessed, my wife and I, that night, to see a side of Prince that was not commercial, that was truly authentic. And from the improvisation, we were lucky to be there. So Prince in 2003.
That is great. Rebecca and I, my wife and I, we were in Vegas, and we just happened to be in Vegas the night that we got the news that Prince had passed away. And on Fremont Street, which, you know, Fremont is the street that's covered with the lights. Cleo, that entire street was a tribute to Prince. And so if you can imagine Purple Rain.
Yes.
I mean, just let's go crazy. Just everything Prince as you walked and just hit after hit after hit after hit. And to your point, such a talented, gifted musician, entertainer, and lyricist. He was kind of the full package.
Yes, without question, one of my favorite all time.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Cleo, it's been a pleasure. And you have any last words of wisdom you'd like to share with us?
Aaron, first I want to thank you, thank the audience. I really appreciate the opportunity talk about growing our future. The only thing I would say to the audience is this: keep that perspective positive, but whenever you see something, look at what can you do from your position to be able to turn things around, change it, or transform it. I think we're all blessed with talents and treasures. Some of us have more than the other. But with the talents and treasures that we have, how are we spending our time by utilizing our talents and treasures to truly make the place that we work, the place that we live, the people that we love, a better place and a better community to exist? So your contribution is what it's all about. And what are you doing to contribute to make your existence and impact those that are in need of something positive better?
Wow. Cleo, we had a board meeting today, and during that board meeting, I talked about time, talent, and treasures. We've added another one to that list, though. It's time, talent, treasures, and testimony. And I just want to tell you, thank you for sharing your testimony today. Because, Cleo, not only did your testimony take us up with you, but you also sent that elevator down to help pull us up to make us better as well. So thank you for sharing your testimony and your incredible career. And if anybody is looking for some good reads, I would recommend both of this author's books. So with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you for joining us for the Growing Our Future podcast. It's always a pleasure to have you here. It's always so much fun to have great guests like Cleo Franklin. We have been so fortunate to have incredible individuals that are willing to take a little time out of their schedule and pour into us. And, you know, like I always say, if you want to know what the future is, grow it.
That's right.
Guess what? Today, we got some seeds to plant. Now we've got a responsibility, and we got work to do, and you don't harvest without a little work. So it's time to get out there and grow the future we want. Cleo, thank you. And until next time, we will see y'all down the road. Everybody be safe, be positive, and make a positive contribution.
Thank you. Pleasure.